The morning sun streamed through the dusty windows of Joe's diner as Robert pushed open the heavy glass door. The familiar smell of bacon grease and fresh coffee hit him like a warm hug. His 7-year-old daughter Lily skipped beside him, her pigtails bouncing with each step. This had become their Saturday morning ritual ever since the world changed 6 months ago. "Can I get chocolate chip pancakes again, Dad?" Lily asked, already knowing the answer. Her bright eyes sparkled with the kind of joy that only children seem to carry even through the darkest times. "Of course, sweetheart," Robert replied, managing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He guided her to their usual booth in the corner, the one with the slightly torn red vinyl seats and the wobbly table that he always had to steady with a folded napkin. The diner wasn't much to look at. The checkered floor tiles were chipped in. Places and the walls displayed faded photographs of the town from decades past. But it had become their safe haven, a place where Robert could pretend that everything was normal, at least for an hour or two each week. As they settled into their seats, Robert watched his daughter color on the paper placemat with crayons the waitress always brought. Lily hummed softly to herself, the same tune her mother used to sing while cooking dinner. The sound made Robert's chest tighten, but he didn't have the heart to ask her to stop. 6 months. It felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. The phone call from the hospital still echoed in his mind during quiet moments like these. The words accident and didn't make it had shattered his world in an instant. One moment he was a husband and father living a perfectly ordinary life, and the next he was a single dad trying to figure out how to keep going. The grief counselor had told him that routine was important, especially for children. "Keep doing the things you used to do together," she had said. "Create new traditions that honor her memory while building new experiences." So here they were, every Saturday morning, eating pancakes and trying to find their way forward. Robert had never realized how much his wife had done until she was gone. The endless loads of laundry, the grocery shopping, the way she remembered every detail of Lily's school schedule and friends' birthdays. Now it was all on him, and some days he felt like he was drowning in the ordinary tasks of daily life. "Dad, are you okay?" Lily's small voice broke through his thoughts. She was looking at him with those wise eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just thinking," he said, reaching across to ruffle her hair. "What do you want to drink with those pancakes?" "Orange juice, please, the kind with the little bits in it," she said, returning to her coloring. She was drawing a family of stick figures, a tall man, a woman with long hair, and a small girl in the middle. The woman figure was colored in light blue, her mother's favorite color. Robert flagged down their usual waitress, Betty, who had been working at the diner for as long as anyone could remember. She had kind eyes and always slipped Lily an extra packet of syrup without being asked. "The usual?" Betty asked, pulling out her order pad even though she already knew what they wanted. "Yes, ma'am. Chocolate chip pancakes for the little one and coffee and wheat toast for me," Robert replied. "You need to eat more than toast, honey," Betty said, with the concern of someone who had watched him grow thinner over the past months. "How about I bring you some scrambled eggs, too, on the house?" Robert wanted to protest, but he knew Betty meant well. Everyone in the small town had been looking out for them since the accident. Casseroles appeared on their doorstep, neighbors offered to babysit, and his co-workers had covered his shifts when grief made it impossible to focus on anything. As Betty walked away, Robert looked around the diner. A few elderly men sat at the counter, solving the world's problems over coffee and pie. A young couple shared a milkshake in the booth across from them, laughing quietly about something on the woman's phone. Normal people living normal lives, something Robert wasn't sure he remembered how to do anymore. The nights were the hardest. After Lily went to bed, the house felt impossibly quiet. He found himself talking to empty rooms, asking questions that would never be answered. Sometimes he would catch himself setting 2 coffee cups in the morning before remembering he only needed 1. His wife had been the sunshine in their home. She sang while she did dishes, danced in the kitchen while cooking dinner, and had a laugh that could make anyone smile. She had been the one who remembered to take pictures at school events, who organized playdates and birthday parties, who somehow made their small house feel like the center of the universe. Now Robert was trying to be both parents, and most days he felt like he was failing at both jobs. He burned more dinners than he cared to admit, forgot to sign permission slips, and had to learn how to braid hair through YouTube videos. "Dad, will you teach me to drive when I'm older?" Lily asked suddenly, looking up from her drawing. The question caught him off guard. "Of course I will. Why do you ask?" "Because Mommy was supposed to teach me, but now she can't. So you'll have to do both jobs, right?" The simple honesty of her words hit him like a punch to the gut. This little girl was processing the same loss. He was, but with the clear logic that only children possessed. She had already figured out what Robert was still struggling to accept, that he would have to fill both roles now. "That's right, sweetheart. I'll teach you everything your mom would have taught you and everything I was supposed to teach you too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Betty returned with their food, setting down a plate of steaming pancakes in front of Lily and placing the eggs she had promised in front of Robert. The smell was comforting, reminding him of weekend mornings when his wife would make big family breakfasts and they would sit around the table planning their day. As Lily dove into her pancakes with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster, Robert allowed himself a moment of gratitude. They were surviving. Some days that felt like victory enough. He was learning to braid hair, even if it took 3 tries. He was figuring out which foods she would actually eat for lunch. He was becoming the parent she needed, even if it meant being twice as much as he thought he could be. The diner continued to buzz with quiet conversation around them, the sounds of a normal Saturday morning in a small town. For the first time in months, Robert felt something that might have been peace. They were going to be okay. Different than before, but okay. Robert was cutting his eggs into small pieces when Lily suddenly stopped eating. Her fork hung in midair, loaded with syrup-covered pancake, as she stared across the diner with wide eyes. Her mouth fell open slightly, and the color drained from her cheeks. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the clatter of dishes and morning conversations. "Dad, look." Something in her tone made Robert's stomach drop. He had heard that same breathless whisper once before, the night she had woken up from a nightmare about her mother. But this was different. This was wonder mixed with confusion, like she had seen something impossible. "What is it, sweetheart?" Robert asked, following her gaze across the busy diner. "That lady," Lily said, pointing with a trembling finger toward the far side of the restaurant. "She looks just like Mommy." Robert's first instinct was to comfort his daughter, to gently explain that sometimes when we miss someone very much, we see them in other people. He had read about it in one of the grief books the counselor had given him. Children often thought they saw their lost parent in strangers, but when he turned to look, the words died in his throat. A woman was standing beside a table near the window, taking an order from an elderly couple. She held a notepad in her left hand and a pen in her right, writing quickly as the man spoke. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard diner uniform, a pale blue dress with a white apron. Robert's vision blurred for a moment. His hands began to shake so violently that he had to set down his coffee cup before he dropped it. The woman turned slightly, giving him a better view of her profile, and his world tilted sideways. It wasn't just a resemblance. It wasn't the kind of similarity that makes you do a double take and think, that person reminds me of someone. This was exact. This was impossible. This was his wife standing 20 feet away from him, alive and breathing and taking breakfast. Orders as if the last 6 months of grief and pain had been nothing more than a terrible dream. "Daddy?" Lily's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Daddy, are you okay? You look funny." Robert couldn't answer. His mouth had gone completely dry, and his heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. The woman moved to another table, and he watched every step, every gesture, looking for some sign that this was just his grief-stricken mind playing tricks on him. But there was the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated. There was the gentle smile she gave to a customer's child. There was the slight favor of her left leg, so subtle that most people would never notice it, but Robert knew it came from an old injury from when she had fallen off her bike as a teenager. "That's not possible," he whispered to himself. But his eyes refused to look away. The woman laughed at something a customer said, and the sound hit Robert like a physical blow. It was the same laugh that had filled their kitchen every morning. The same laugh that had made Lily giggle uncontrollably during tickle fights. The same laugh he had thought he would never hear again. "Dad, it really does look like Mommy," Lily said, her voice full of excitement now. "Should we go talk to her? Maybe she knows where Mommy went." The innocent hope in his daughter's voice snapped Robert back to reality. He couldn't let Lily get her hopes up. He couldn't put her through the disappointment when this turned out to be just a cruel coincidence. But even as he thought this, he couldn't stop staring at the woman. She moved to clear a table, and Robert noticed the way she stacked the plates. Always the bowls first, then the smaller plates on top, just like his wife had done at home. When she wiped down the table, she moved in the same circular pattern, always starting from the left side. "We should go," Robert said suddenly, reaching for his wallet with hands that still wouldn't stop shaking. "We should go right now." "But, Dad, we haven't finished eating," Lily protested, looking between her half-eaten pancakes and the mysterious waitress. "We'll come back later," Robert said, throwing money on the table without counting it. "We need to leave. Now." But as he stood up, the woman turned in his direction. For just a moment, their eyes met across the crowded diner. Robert felt like he had been struck by lightning. Those eyes, brown with tiny flecks of gold around the pupils, were exactly the same eyes that had looked at him on their wedding day. The same eyes that had filled with tears of joy when Lily was born. The same eyes that had closed forever in that hospital room 6 months ago. The woman's expression changed when she saw him. Her friendly waitress smile faded, replaced by something that looked almost like recognition. She tilted her head slightly, studying his face with the same intensity that he was studying hers. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then someone called out, Miss," from another table, and the spell was broken. The woman turned away to help the customer, and Robert grabbed Lily's hand. "Come on, we're leaving," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But Dad..." "Now, Lily." He practically dragged his confused daughter out of the diner, not stopping until they reached his truck in the parking lot. His hands shook so badly that it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. "Daddy, why are we leaving?" Lily asked from the passenger seat, her eyes wide with concern. "And why are you crying?" Robert hadn't realized that tears were streaming down his face. He wiped them away quickly, trying to pull himself together for his daughter's sake, but the questions were spinning in his mind like a tornado. How was this possible? He had been at the hospital. He had held his wife's hand as the machine stopped beeping. He had planned the funeral, had picked out the casket, had watched them lower it into the ground. He had the death certificate in a folder at home. He had insurance papers and condolence cards and a house full of sympathy flowers that had long since died. But that woman in the diner, it wasn't just that she looked like his wife. She moved like her, laughed like her, even stood like her. The scar on her left hand from when she had cut herself cooking dinner 2 years ago. The small mole just above her right collarbone that she had always been self-conscious about. The way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. "Dad?" Lily's small voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "Are we going to be okay?" Robert looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw the fear in her eyes. She had already lost her mother. She couldn't handle losing him to whatever this was, too. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, forcing his voice to sound calm and normal. "We're going to be fine. Sometimes grown-ups just need a minute to think about things." But as he drove them home, Robert knew that nothing would ever be fine again until he figured out who that woman was and why she looked exactly like his dead wife. Robert didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of what had happened at the diner. By the time morning came, he had convinced himself it was all in his head. Grief could make people see things that weren't there. The mind played tricks when it was desperate to find hope in hopeless situations. But then he remembered the way the woman had looked at him. That wasn't his imagination. She had recognized him too. The next Saturday, Robert told himself he was just keeping their normal routine. Lily needed consistency, and Joe's Diner was their place. It had nothing to do with the mysterious waitress, nothing at all. "Are we going to see the lady who looks like Mommy?" Lily asked as they walked toward the diner entrance. "I don't know, sweetheart. She might not be working today," Robert replied, trying to keep his voice casual even though his heart was racing. But she was there. The moment they walked in, Robert spotted her carrying a pot of coffee between tables. In the daylight streaming through the windows, the resemblance was even more striking. He guided Lily to a different booth this time, one with a clear view of the entire restaurant. Robert ordered coffee and pretended to read the menu while watching the woman work. He learned that her name tag read Anna, and that she had been working there for about 2 months, according to what he overheard Betty telling another customer, Anna. His wife's name had been Catherine, but she had always said if she could pick any name, it would be Anna. She had loved the sound of it, the simplicity of it. Over the next few weeks, Robert found excuses to visit the diner more often. He told himself he was just curious, that he needed to prove to himself this woman was just a stranger who happened to look like his wife. But with each visit, the similarities became more impossible to ignore. Anna hummed while she worked, the same melody Catherine used to hum while doing dishes. She organized the salt and pepper shakers in perfectly straight lines, just like Catherine had arranged everything in their kitchen. When customers' children acted up, she had the same gentle way of distracting them that Catherine had used with Lily. "You've been coming in a lot lately," Betty observed one Thursday afternoon when Robert was sitting alone at the counter. Lily was at school, and he had told himself he was just grabbing a quick lunch. "The coffee's good here," Robert said weakly. Betty gave him a knowing look. "Uh-huh. And it wouldn't have anything to do with our new girl Anna, would it?" Robert's face flushed red. "I don't know what you mean. Honey, I've been working here for 30 years. I've seen every kind of customer there is. You've got that look of a man who's seen a ghost." The word ghost made Robert's blood run cold. "What do you know about her? Anna, I mean." Betty glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "Not much, to be honest. She showed up about 2 months ago looking for work. Sweet girl. But there's something sad about her. She doesn't talk much about her past." "Where did she come from?" "That's the strange part. She said she couldn't remember much before last year. Some kind of accident, she said. Hit her head pretty bad and lost a lot of memories. Poor thing's been living at that transitional housing place across town, trying to piece her life back together." Robert's coffee cup slipped from his numb fingers, crashing to the floor and shattering. The sound made several customers look over, including Anna. For a moment their eyes met across the diner, and Robert saw something flicker in her expression. Confusion, maybe, or recognition. "You okay, honey?" Betty asked, already grabbing a towel to clean up the mess. "I'm fine," Robert lied, throwing money on the counter and rushing out of the diner before Anna could come over to help clean up. That night, Robert did something he hadn't done since Catherine died. He pulled out all their old photo albums and spread them across the kitchen table. Wedding photos, vacation pictures, snapshots from Lily's birthday parties. He studied every image of his wife, looking for some detail he might have missed. Some proof that Anna was just a remarkable look-alike. But the more he looked, the more convinced he became that they were the same person. The small scar above Catherine's left eyebrow from when she fell off her bike as a child, Anna had the same mark. The way Catherine's right eye was slightly smaller than her left, so subtle that Robert had only noticed it in close-up photos. Anna had the same asymmetry. "Daddy, why are you looking at pictures of Mommy?" Robert turned to find Lily standing in the doorway in her pajamas holding her stuffed rabbit. "I was just remembering," he said softly. Lily climbed onto his lap and looked at the photos spread across the table. She was pretty. Yes, she was. The lady at the diner is pretty too. They really do look the same, don't they? Robert wrapped his arms around his daughter, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "What would you think if I told you something that sounded impossible?" "Like what?" "Like what if that lady at the diner wasn't just someone who looked like Mommy? What if it actually was Mommy? Lily was quiet for a long moment, considering this with the seriousness that children brought to important questions. "But Mommy died," she said finally. "We went to her funeral, we put flowers on her grave. I know, sweetheart, I know it doesn't make sense. But if it was really Mommy, wouldn't she remember us? Wouldn't she come home?" The question hit Robert like a punch to the gut. If Anna really was Catherine, why didn't she know them? Why was she working in a diner instead of being with her family? The next day, Robert made a decision that would have seemed crazy just a week earlier. He hired a private investigator named Tom Walsh, a former police detective who specialized in missing persons cases. "I need you to find out everything you can about a woman named Ana Rodriguez," Robert said, sitting across from Tom in his small office above a hardware store. "Is she missing?" Tom asked, pulling out a notepad. "No, she's working at Joe's Diner downtown. I need to know where she came from, what happened to her before she arrived here." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Mind if I ask why?" Robert hesitated. How could he explain without sounding completely insane? "She looks exactly like my wife, my dead wife." To his credit, Tom didn't laugh or suggest that Robert needed therapy. He just nodded and wrote something in his notepad. "How long has your wife been deceased?" 6 months. Car accident. And this Anna woman showed up when? About 2 months ago." Tom was quiet for a moment, tapping his pen against the notepad. "You know, in my line of work, I've seen some pretty strange coincidences. Sometimes the impossible turns out to be just improbable. So you'll take the case?" "Yeah, I'll take it. But I have to warn you, sometimes the truth isn't what we want it to be. Are you prepared for whatever I might find?" Robert thought about Lily's question from the night before. If Anna really was Catherine, why didn't she remember them? And if she wasn't Catherine, why did she look exactly like her? "I need to know the truth," Robert said. "Whatever it is." 3 days later, Tom called with news that made Robert's hands shake as he held the phone. "You need to sit down for this," Tom said, his voice serious. "I've been digging into Ana Rodriguez's background, and what I found doesn't make sense." Robert was already sitting at his kitchen table, but he gripped the edge anyway. "What did you find?" "Her story about the accident and memory loss checks out. But here's the weird part. The accident happened on March 15th, about 18 months ago. She was found unconscious on Highway 84, about 60 miles from here. No identification, no car nearby, no witnesses." Robert's blood went cold. Highway 84 was the same road where Catherine had her accident. What else? "The hospital records show she was in a coma for 3 weeks. When she woke up, she couldn't remember anything about her life before the accident." "But Robert, here's what's really strange. There's no record of Ana Rodriguez existing before that day. No birth certificate, no social security number, no school records, nothing. That's impossible. That's what I thought too. So I dug deeper. The hospital had to create a temporary identity for her since she had no ID. They used the name Ana Rodriguez because she kept saying that name in her sleep." Robert felt like the room was spinning. "Ana Rodriguez. Are you sure?" "Positive. But it gets stranger. I compared the hospital photos they took when she was admitted to the pictures you gave me of your wife. Robert, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. The bone structure, the facial measurements, even the dental records that the hospital took, they're identical." The phone slipped from Robert's numb fingers and clattered onto the table. This wasn't possible. None of this was possible. But it was happening anyway. That afternoon, Robert made a decision that terrified him. He was going to talk to Anna directly. He couldn't keep hiding in corners, watching her like some kind of stalker. He needed answers, and she was the only one who could give them to him. He waited until the dinner rush was over and the diner was nearly empty. Anna was wiping down tables, humming that same familiar tune. Robert's heart hammered as he approached her. "Excuse me," he said softly. Anna looked up, and for a moment Robert saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition? Fear? He couldn't tell. "Can I help you?" she asked, but her voice was different now. Uncertain. "I'm Robert. Robert Chen. I think we need to talk. Anna's face went pale. She set down her cleaning cloth and looked around the empty diner. I don't understand. Do we know each other? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Robert pulled out his phone and showed her a picture of Catherine. Does this woman look familiar to you? Anna stared at the photo for a long time. Her hands began to tremble and she had to sit down in the nearest booth. I don't know. Sometimes I have dreams about a woman who looks like this, but I can't remember where I've seen her. Her name was Catherine. She was my wife. Was? She died 6 months ago, in a car accident on Highway 84. The color drained completely from Anna's face. She looked like she might faint. Highway 84? That's where they found me. Robert sat down across from her, his heart pounding so hard he could barely hear his own voice. Anna, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. Do you remember anything about your life before the accident? Anything at all? Anna closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temples. Sometimes I get flashes like pieces of a dream. A little girl with dark hair laughing. A house with yellow curtains in the kitchen. The smell of chocolate chip cookies baking. She opened her eyes and looked at Robert with confusion. But the doctor said these might just be random memories, not necessarily my own. Robert's breath caught. Their kitchen did have yellow curtains. Catherine had baked chocolate chip cookies every Sunday. And Lily's hair was dark, just like her mother's. Anna, I'm going to show you another picture, but I need you to prepare yourself because this might be difficult. He scrolled through his phone and found a family photo from last Christmas. All three of them were wearing matching red sweaters that Catherine had insisted on buying. They were laughing because Lily had gotten frosting on her nose while decorating cookies. Anna looked at the photo, and something changed in her expression. Her eyes widened, and she pressed her hand to her chest like she couldn't breathe. Little girl, she whispered. I've seen her before in my dreams. She's always laughing, always happy. She looked up at Robert with tears in her eyes. Why do I know her? Why do I remember her laugh? Her name is Lily. She's 7 years old. And Anna, she's been asking about you every day since we first saw. You here? Asking about me, but I've never met her. Haven't you? Robert leaned forward. Anna, what if I told you that the woman in this picture, Catherine, what if I told you that she's you? Anna shook her head frantically. That's impossible. People don't come back from the dead. That only happens in movies. But what if she didn't die? What if there was a mistake? What if somehow, some way, you survived an accident that everyone thought killed you? Anna was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I can't. I don't understand. If what you're saying is true, why don't I remember you? Why don't I remember being married, having a daughter? The doctors said you had severe memory loss from your head injury. But Anna, the memories are still there. You just proved it. You remember Lily's laugh. You remember our kitchen. You remember the cookies. Anna stared at the family photo again, and Robert watched as more pieces seemed to click into place in her mind. The yellow curtains, she said slowly. They have little sunflowers on them, and there's a chip in the corner of the kitchen sink from when someone dropped a heavy pot. Robert's heart stopped. Nobody knew about that chip except him and Catherine. It had happened 2 years ago, and they had never gotten around to fixing it. And the little girl, Lily, Anna continued, her voice becoming stronger. She has a stuffed rabbit named Hopper. She sleeps with it every night, and she sucks her thumb when she's scared, even though she's too old for it now. Robert nodded, unable to speak. Those details weren't in any photo. Anna couldn't have known them unless she had lived them. Robert, Anna said, looking at him with eyes that were suddenly impossibly familiar. I think I'm starting to remember. The diner felt completely silent around them, as if the whole world was holding its breath for what would happen next. Robert reached across the table and took Anna's hand. It fit perfectly in his, just like Catherine's always had. "Then let's go home," he said. "Let's go see Lily. She's been waiting for you." The drive to Robert's house felt like the longest 20 minutes of his life. Anna sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at streets that seemed both familiar and foreign to her. Every few blocks, she would point to something and say, "I know that place," or "We used to drive past that store." "Take your time," Robert kept saying, though his own heart was racing with excitement and fear. What if seeing their home didn't bring back more memories? What if this was all just a cruel coincidence that would fall apart under closer inspection? But when they pulled into the driveway of the small blue house with white trim, Anna's breath caught in her throat. "The rose bushes," she whispered, pointing to the flower bed beside the front porch. "I planted those. They were so small when I put them in the ground. I wasn't sure they would survive the first winter." Robert nodded, remembering how Catherine had worried over those roses, watering them carefully and covering them with blankets when frost was predicted. Now they were full and healthy, blooming with pink flowers that filled the air with sweet perfume. "The mailbox is crooked," Anna continued, noticing details that flooded back to her. "It got hit by a snowplow 2 winters ago. We kept saying we'd fix it, but we never got around to it." Inside the house, Anna moved like she was walking through a dream. She ran her fingers along the banister of the staircase, pausing at the spot where the wood was slightly worn smooth from years of hands sliding along it. In the living room, she went straight to the bookshelf and pulled out a photo album, opening it to a page of Lily's baby pictures. "She was so tiny," Anna said, tears streaming down her face. "I remember being terrified to hold her at first because she seemed so fragile. But she was strong. Even as a baby, she was so strong and brave." Robert watched in amazement as more memories surfaced. Anna knew which cabinet held the coffee mugs, where they kept the spare keys, even which floorboard in the hallway creaked when you stepped on it. This wasn't just someone who looked like his wife. This was Catherine, somehow miraculously returned to them. When Lily's school bus pulled up outside, Robert felt his stomach flip with nervousness. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her mother, who she watched being buried 6 months ago, is somehow alive and standing in their living room? "I should wait upstairs," Anna said, sensing his anxiety. "This is going to be confusing enough for her without me just appearing out of nowhere." But it was too late. Lily's key turned in the front door, and she bounded into the house calling, "Dad, I'm home," the way she did every day. She stopped dead when she saw Anna standing by the window, her backpack sliding off her shoulder and hitting the floor with a thud. For a long moment, nobody moved. Mother and daughter stared at each other across the living room, both afraid to believe what they were seeing. "Mommy?" Lily whispered, her voice so small and uncertain that it broke Robert's heart. Anna knelt down, opening her arms. "Hello, baby. I've missed you so much." Lily ran to her mother, throwing herself into Anna's arms with the complete trust that only children possess. Anna held her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her small body. "I knew it was you at the diner," Lily said, her voice muffled against Anna's shoulder. "I knew you weren't really gone. I told Daddy, but he said it was impossible." "Sometimes impossible things happen," Anna said, smoothing Lily's hair. "Sometimes people find their way back home, even when everyone thinks they can't." Over the next few weeks, Anna's memories continued to return in waves. Some came back easily, triggered by familiar sights and smells. Others took longer, surfacing during quiet moments or in dreams. Robert contacted Dr. Phillips, a neurologist who specialized in memory disorders, to help understand what had happened. "It's actually not as unusual as you might think," Dr. Phillips explained during their appointment. "Severe head trauma can cause what we call dissociative amnesia. The memories aren't destroyed, they're just locked away, sometimes for months or even years. The right triggers can cause them to resurface." "But how did she survive the accident in the first place?" Robert asked. "The hospital told me she was dead." Dr. Phillips pulled out a thick file. "I've been reviewing the medical records from both hospitals. It appears there was a mix-up in the emergency room that night. There were multiple accident victims, and in the chaos, 2 patients were misidentified. Your wife was unconscious and had no identification. The woman who was pronounced dead had similar injuries and build. The explanation was both simple and impossible to believe. A mistake in a busy hospital, two women who looked similar in the dark chaos of an emergency room, and families who had grieved for the wrong person. The family of the other woman, Robert asked quietly. Do they know? They've been notified. It's been difficult for everyone involved, but they're grateful to finally know the truth about what happened to their loved one. At home, Anna struggled with pieces of her old life that didn't quite fit anymore. She remembered being Catherine, but she had also lived as Anna for over a year. She had made friends at the diner, had her own small apartment, had built a life from nothing with no memory of the past. Sometimes I feel like I'm two different people, she confessed to Robert one evening as they sat on the porch swing. I remember our wedding day. I remember giving birth to Lily. I remember all of it. But I also remember those months of not knowing who I was, of having to start over completely. You're still you, Robert said, taking her hand. You're still the woman who plants rose bushes and burns toast and sings in the shower. You're still Lily's mother and my wife. The rest is just extra experience. Anna laughed, and Robert realized it was the first time he had heard that sound in their home for over a year and a half. Extra experience. I like that. The hardest part was explaining everything to Lily, who had questions that even the doctors couldn't fully answer. Why didn't Mommy remember them at first? Where had she been all this time? Why did the hospital make such a big mistake? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Anna explained one night as she tucked Lily into bed for the first time in 18 months. Even doctors and hospitals, but the important thing is that we're all together now. Are you going to go away again? Lily asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit tight. Never, Anna promised. I'm home now and I'm never leaving you again. As the months passed, their family found a new rhythm. Anna quit her job at the diner and slowly readjusted to being a wife and mother. Some memories came back completely, while others remained fuzzy or lost forever. But it didn't matter. They were together again, and that was enough. On Saturdays, they still went to Joe's diner for breakfast. But now it was a celebration instead of a memorial, a place where their impossible second chance had begun with a 7-year-old's innocent observation. Dad, that waitress looks just like Mom. Sometimes the most unbelievable stories turn out to be true. Sometimes people really do get second chances, and sometimes love really is strong enough to bring someone home.